Hi, it's Dwyer, dwyercrime.blog. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me make a couple of points here, because I don't think in 2025 young people today understand the way things used to be. Right? I can tell you when I got out of school, this was 1989. I went to LA, had a job offer in LA, was looking for a place to live, and everything was way expensive for someone who was just out of grad school. Right? And of course, I was in LA for a reason. I wanted to be around happening scenes. Right? I wanted to be close to the party. I didn't go to LA to go to bed early. I went to LA to explore the nightlife, right? To get out, to meet people. So there was a place. It was advertising a studio. Wasn't the biggest studio, but it was right by the Sunset Strip. I mean, real close to places like, at the time, happening spots, Rainbow Bar and Grill, Whiskey A Go-Go. Right? There's a movie, Daisy and the Six, that's playing on one of these channels, a series. It's very well done. And they talk about clubs on the Sunset Strip. And let's just say back then, I would get home from work. Then I would go to, some club. They would have live bands in the club. And these were the best musicians I had ever heard in my life. So imagine it's 1989, right? I had been living on a friend's sofa. I get an apartment. I'm spending less than $700 a month. And I'm right by the Sunset Strip. So I thought, what's the catch with my apartment? My friends wanted to know. Right? The catch with my apartment was that the building was primarily gay, right? And it was the kind of thing where you would walk in the front door and there'd be guys holding hands. When I, went to get the apartment, when I was shown the apartment and I looked at the apartment and it looked happening, and, the guy confirmed the rent, which I couldn't believe, right? The guy, then changed his voice, had someone walk in the office. I believe this was set up, right? This was for my benefit. And the guy started acting real effeminate. Then the guy turned to me and the guy said, "Do you still want the apartment?" At the time, I thought to myself, man, what a deal. I couldn't believe that I was well under budget to get the apartment in that spot. Right? Now, let me go further. Let me go back to the 70s. Right? I need for people to understand, and this is being covered up now. My generation surprises me. This is being covered up now. But in the black community, right? I was raised in a black neighborhood. In the black community in the 1970s, we all understood that disco was king, right? It was king in my community. We also understood that the disco scene, many of the innovators, many of the people who, you heard the music and you thought that's the jam, right? The songs that were flooding the floor in black neighborhoods, even neighborhoods where black communities kind of double-edged. You had this heavy religious content, right? In other words, the older people in my community, they were religious churchgoers. You had this ongoing church scene. But a lot of disco was gay. I mean, a lot of it. I'll even go further. A lot of the fashion was gay. Right? When I was a freshman in high school, everyone wanted to wear what we called French cuts, right? Loopless pants that didn't have seams on the side, right? Folks, that was a gay fashion. We were in the black community, right? Again, heavy religious content, and we were listening to music from people like Sylvester, right? The Village People were big in the 70s, right? Big. And I'm talking about not big in a off-road type way. No, they were well accepted. You wanted to know what they were playing in gay clubs. So when I went out to California to go to college, right, I just assumed, because I was raised in a bit of a bubble, I just assumed that people understood that a lot of artists were gay. A lot of actors were gay. Right? I just assumed people understood that there were gay people in life. That was not the case. Right? So understand, just like if you find a great spot in a black neighborhood, it might be, renting for $200 below market. In the late 1980s, West Hollywood, believe it or not, the same West Hollywood that right now is on, some of these shows, about wealthy women, that West Hollywood, the West Hollywood of Dorothy Dandridge, right? I believe she died in West Hollywood. Jack Cassidy, right? That West Hollywood used to be gritty. It used to have a sizable gay component. Now, I haven't been to West Hollywood in years, right? So in the comment section of this video, if you know the lay of the land now, tell us about it, right? But understand, it was underpriced, right? I look back and I can't believe how lucky I was. Right? If I had any common sense, I would have kept that apartment. Instead, I moved to by the water. Right? West Hollywood now, of course, is one of the chic addresses in Los Angeles. Understand, the other side of Sunset are the Hollywood Hills. Right? And so, I just need for people to understand that the gay community in the late 80s, early 90s, right, was viewed in such a manner that I didn't know anybody in LA. It's not like I had connections. I saw an ad in a newspaper, and I was able to get my own apartment. Right? In my mid-20s, I was 25 years old. I was able to get my own apartment for hundreds of dollars less than market because people were that afraid of the gay community. Understand what was happening at the time, too. It needs to be mentioned. HIV was running roughshod through the gay community. Right? It took the United States years before they even acknowledged that HIV was a big problem, right? Understand how the mindset was. Magic Johnson, just a couple years later, Magic Johnson was diagnosed with HIV, and the feeling was that you couldn't touch Magic Johnson. That there was no way Magic should be allowed to play in the NBA because you're playing basketball, you're sweating. People thought that if a gay person sneezed on you, you were certain to get AIDS, right? Rock Hudson, famously somewhere in the 1980s, kissed Linda Evans on TV. And of course, Rock ends up dying of HIV. Understand the HIV stigma in the 80s. you saw Rock Hudson losing weight, right? You saw him on TV and you thought, wow, what's wrong with Rock? And he couldn't acknowledge that he was HIV positive. Then he ends up kissing Linda Evans, and we all thought, oh, wow, that must be it for Linda, right? There wasn't the understanding that, casual contact, brushing against someone who's HIV positive wouldn't transmit the disease. So there was a lot of paranoia. Now, let me just be as blunt as I can be here. I do true crime here on YouTube, right? And one of the most disappointing things from the 70s and 80s is the ongoing cover-up we're suffering from, in my opinion, concerning the serial killers from the people around them, right? The 70s, you have Ted Bundy. Somehow I'm supposed to believe that the people around Ted Bundy had no idea that while Ted drove a Volkswagen, while Ted had his arm in a sling, while Ted is going around and he has restraints in his vehicle, while Ted is disappearing for periods of time, while Ted just happens to be going interstate, and wherever he goes, people are getting killed by someone with dark hair, roughly his height and weight. I'm supposed to believe that no one around Ted Bundy put it together. No one around Ted Bundy, who had a serious girlfriend at the time. No one around Ted Bundy's thinking to themselves, wow, Ted was out by Lake Smarish, however the pronunciation, and people got killed. Maybe he's the guy, right? Eventually, Ted's girlfriend starts to suspect that he's a serial killer, but it takes some time, right? I'm supposed to believe that nobody around Gary Ridgway knew that he was the Green River Killer, right, folks? I got to tell you, if you're living with someone and they go missing from time to time, and somehow when they go missing, people end up dead, right? A lot of people. And of course, the people are coming into Ridgway's vehicle. If you live with Ridgway, you would imagine that you're in the vehicle. You mean to tell me nobody smelled anything? Nobody smelled perfume in the vehicle? You mean to tell me nobody saw Ridgway's vehicle in the red light district? Folks, I'm not buying it, right? Let's just say I'm entitled to my own opinion, right? I believe there's a massive cover-up. It makes these terrifying crimes that much more terrifying that you realize people today are still covering them up. So let's talk about what happened in Indianapolis. Let's talk about a string of murders of gay men. And let's try to reconcile what people are claiming now that they knew or did not know at the time. Right? The basic thesis here is simply that what we're hearing isn't credible. Right? It takes the truth a long time to come out. We still don't know what happened during the Kennedy assassination. It took years for them to admit that Kennedy was a philanderer. Right? It took years for people to figure out that something's not quite right with Kennedy firing Allen Dulles and then Allen Dulles ending up on the Warren Commission. Right? Well, let's talk about the Fox Hollow murders. For those who don't know, understand, gay men started going missing around 1993 in Indianapolis. Right now, the feeling at the time was that maybe these men were voluntarily going missing because HIV was a big concern, right? Many people want medical privacy. If you found that you were HIV positive, you might, then decide to, disappear from the social scene, uh, you know, pursue other things on your bucket list before you die, maybe meet with friends and family to enjoy your last days, right? That's how dark it was back then, right? Understand, too, some other men are living secret lives, right? So you're out, you're in the gay scene in Indianapolis. Maybe you then decide, I am going to live a square life. This is my youth that no one knows about. I'm not even from Indianapolis. Let me return home. Let me get back with my high school sweetheart. Let me live a life where, I can go down to the church and hang around the community and be someone I'm really not. Right? A variation of this is BTK. Dennis Rader. Right? Churchgoer, has a social profile. In actuality, he has murderous fantasies that he's living out. So understand, the gay community is losing people in 1993, and observers don't quite know what's going on. Right? More importantly, the gay community in 1993 in Indianapolis is a marginal community. By that, I simply mean, a square person dies, right? Someone from, let's say some high-profile, societally appropriate role, right? A police officer, a nurse, a church deacon. They pass. It's in the paper. It's heavily investigated. Right? A gay person passes. They're undervalued. Right? Black people go missing. There isn't an investigation. Right? Not the same level of investigation. Now, we can debate this. Folks, if you were around in 1993, you know what I'm saying is true. Right? Understand, on the Fox Hollow show, which I'm watching right now on Hulu, one of the detectives calls missing persons to report a missing gay man, and then he finds out that there are no missing people currently being investigated by the Missing Persons Unit. Well, now we understand that something like 10,000 bone fragments were found on the premises of Herbert Baumeister. Believe it or not, he's a founder of Save-A-Lot, a thrift store. Right? Had a lot of money, had a mansion, had a wife, had 3 kids. Right? Now, let's think this through. Because in my eyes, what we're being told is simply hard to believe. He's a regular at a gay bar. Right? He supposedly is living a double life. If we are to believe reports, no one knows he's living a double life. Right? His wife does not know that he's living a double life. Understand, the bartender at the gay bar he attends recognizes him, sees him so much, knows a little about his personality. Right? He's out in the open at the gay bar. Right? This isn't Gary Ridgway pulling up to the curb and picking up prostitutes. No, this is someone in the bar talking to other patrons, socializing with other patrons, right? Convincing other patrons to come home with him. Right? And so the story we're being told is that his wife would leave for stretches with the kids. So, one day, and I understand this story is not quite true, one of the revelations on the Hulu show, it's called the Fox Hollow Murders, is that the witness who came forward didn't fully discuss his involvement with Herbert Baumeister. Right? Well, on some night, according to the official story, what this individual, his name is Mark Goodyear, told the police, Baumeister takes him home. Right? So, of course, Baumeister tells him, look, I have a nice setup at the crib, basically. So they go back to his place. He has an indoor pool. Right? Here's the kicker. Right? When they arrive there and are hanging around the pool, the guy notices that there are mannequins all around the pool. There's a bar off in the distance. There are mannequins at the bar. Now let's freeze it right here. Right, folks? If there are mannequins, male mannequins, around the bar, doesn't his wife know that this is strange? Wouldn't his wife think to herself, wow, how come there are no female mannequins around the bar? Do his kids, young kids, use the pool? Or is this Herbert's private playpen at the house? Right, folks? If it's a private playpen, a pool that the kids don't use, decked out with male mannequins, I just have a hard time believing that his wife didn't know that Herb was, at a minimum, bisexual. At a minimum. Right? Well, just understand, Goodyear claims that Herb wanted to give him a drink, and he just didn't feel comfortable having the drink. So he goes to the bathroom with the filled glass, and he dumps out the drink and replaces it with water. He comes back and he claims, this is what he told the police, this is the big break in the case. He claims that Herb then tried to put a rope around his neck, tried to put a hose around his neck. There's clothing. Herb tried to put a tie around his neck. In other words, Herb had a fixation on strangling his lovers. Right? The two guys have sex in the pool area. Then Herb is trying to restrain Goodyear. Goodyear doesn't let him. Goodyear feels that his reactions told Herb that he wasn't drugged, that he didn't drink whatever the high-powered drink was that he took with him to the bathroom. So, of course, Goodyear spends the night. Herb actually drives him back to Indianapolis. That's the story Goodyear told police. We now know the story's false, because we're now finding out that Goodyear was regularly dating Herb. Now understand, gay men go missing for years in Indianapolis. Right? Starting in 1993, several gay men are going missing every year. Well, Just understand that after Goodyear tells the cops about his odd time at Herb's home, the police go to Herb's home, and there they meet his wife, right? His wife and Herb have been having problems. He has moved out. She is the person living at the home. The home sits on Fox Hollow, right? A very woodsy area all around the house. Now, the wife, of course, claims to not know anything about Herb going to gay clubs. Right, folks? Herb is not even supposed to have worn a costume at the gay clubs. In other words, this isn't, Eddie Redmayne changing his look with makeup, in The Jackal. Right? Herb is showing up to gay clubs as himself. Herb is driving the family car. This is well before Uber. Right? Herb is driving the family car to the gay clubs. Herb is the founder of Save-A-Lot. You understand that founders have investors. They're under more scrutiny than just a normal worker. You mean to tell me that with all the people trying to compete with Herb's business, no one sees Herb at a gay club when he's a regular? Right? Over a prolonged period of time. Right? Understand, Herb is going to the gay club for years. Now, there are breaks. His wife is supposed to be out of town during summers. Right? But just understand, Herb is a regular. People know what he looks like. You mean to tell me no one from the business world spots Herb? No one tells his wife, hey, I saw your car by a gay club, and we're downtown Indianapolis, high profile area, right? Isn't Indy the big town in the area? Well, the wife is claiming she's clueless about it. So the police start to search the wooded area around Herb's house with his wife's blessing. Right, folks? They find thousands, I'm not kidding, thousands of bones. They find a jawbone with teeth in it. They're finding leg bones. Right? Just understand, they're finding so many bones that we now realize that Baumeister was a serial killer. While they are finding the bones, which the cops don't have to dig deep for, a neighbor comes over, starts talking with them, and says, you guys might want to look over here at the creek. The cops then go over to the creek. They find hundreds more bones. Right? One of the cops on the show claims they didn't even have to dig for the bones. They could look on the floor, look on the creek bed, and see the bones. Now, folks, is the wife's story believable? She has 3 young kids. How could she not know that her husband is burying people in the backyard? How could her kids have unfettered access to the wooded area and not come across any of the thousands of bones that are in that wooded area? Right? One wonders how she missed the mannequins over by the pool. One wonders how, the kids apparently aren't in that pool. It's daddy's playpen where he's having sex with strangers. right? She doesn't suspect anything. She claims their sex life was relatively inactive. Folks, it's active enough to have 3 kids. So, of course, the cops start finding bones very close to the house. Baumeister's wife tells them, there was a time where my son and his friend came to the house holding a human skull. So she started talking about it with her husband, whose father was a doctor. The husband then supposedly was able to convince her that he got a skeleton from his father and may have disposed of it in the backyard. Right, folks? I personally have a hard time believing that. If the son's finding a skull, if the son is out in the yard with friends, and if the yard has thousands of bones, how could the family not know that there are thousands of bones in the yard? Right? And so to me, it's a tragedy. While people are alive, I would love to hear the real story. Now I understand. Telling the real story might actually expose some people to possible legal liability. Right? There might be lawsuits against the Baumeister estate. The wife might have a social circle now that she might not be able to keep if they found out that she looked the other way while her husband was killing gay men and burying them in the backyard. Right? So, what this all adds up to, and understand, she's married to her husband for 25 years. She knew him well. But if we're to believe her story now, she didn't know he was gay. She didn't know he was taking strangers back to the house. She didn't know he was burying them in the backyard. The light didn't even go on for her when her son presented her with a skull. So, for me personally, I'm a little in disbelief. Right? I thought that by now we'd be able to talk frankly about the circumstances under which someone like a Ted Bundy, someone like a Gary Ridgway, someone like a Herbert Baumeister committed their murders. We can't, because the people around them are continuing, in my opinion, to try to keep their secrets. Right? There's just too much here for me to believe that Herb is going to a gay club often enough for the bartender to recognize him. And of course, his wife knows nothing about it. Herb is taking the time to decorate an indoor pool area in an adult manner. But yet his wife doesn't seem to know much about it. Who did she think Herb was entertaining in the pool area? Well, now we're finding out that Mark Goodyear's story to the police was bogus. Right? That Goodyear wasn't a one-time visitor to Herb's house. He's a multiple-time visitor to the house. Right? In fact, according to some reports, he's supposed to have been seeing Herb for 2 years. Now, it's fascinating, right? His story to the cops, he is able to spend the night at Herb's place, and then Herb drives him back to Indianapolis. Herb lived in an adjacent bedroom community. Right? Well, folks, did Herb have help? in killing the people he killed? You look at Baumeister, let's just say he, doesn't look that big, doesn't look that strong. He looks slender. How's he able to overpower all of these guys? Why were the guys so trusting of him? Let me say this too. He supposedly is living a secret life, but yet he's driving his car and he's taking the guys he meets at the bar to his house. How much of a secret life was it? Right? So this story to me is riveting. You have a serial killer who ultimately commits suicide. When the cops start closing in on him, Baumeister kills himself. In his suicide letter, he never acknowledges any responsibility for the murders. He doesn't even acknowledge there were murders. But understand, this guy is burying the bodies in his yard. So, the big question is, what role did Mark Goodyear have? He's seeing Herb on a regular basis. Were these two guys in cahoots, luring third parties in and then killing them before disposing of the body in the backyard? Right? How could the wife be married to Herb for 25 years and not know that Herb had these urges, especially with male mannequins by the pool area? Right, folks? The story is incoherent because the people involved, in my opinion, aren't being frank. So Mark Goodyear now has a story where he claims that when the police started finding all the bones at Herb's home, Goodyear is now admitting that he was with Herb at the time. Right? Goodyear is, in a sense, a mistress here. Goodyear is a third wheel in Herb's relationship with his wife. Right? We don't know all the things Goodyear knows. You get the feeling that when the police started questioning him, he panicked. He named Herb, and he then started, telling the story. Right? But just understand, you had serial killing taking place in such a way, given the disposal of the bodies, that I believe a few people knew what was going on. It's only because the gay community didn't get the kind of police attention that heterosexual communities got in Indianapolis in 1993 on to now, that so many people ended up getting killed by this supposedly upstanding business founder and owner. Right? So I get the feeling this is one of those open secret situations. Just like Kennedy's Secret Service knew Kennedy was a philanderer. Right? Just like they participated in setting up some of these Kennedy liaisons, even though for the cameras, Kennedy had a wife, he had young children. Right? You get the feeling that Herbert Baumeister had enablers. Maybe they were actually participants in his crime spree. Right? The cover-up continues all the way through Herb's preparation of his suicide note, which doesn't mention any murders. Right? Here's what the cops know. They've been able to link some of the bones to different people, but they have a lot of bones that they can't quite link. And of course, if you believe Mark Goodyear, who's already lied to the police. Herb, in a moment of candor, told Goodyear, who of course is portraying himself as someone who had limited involvement in the murders. Right? The claim is that Baumeister told his lover, Goodyear, that he had killed 56 people. Think about that. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your thoughts in the comment section of this video. If you know facts about this murder spree that you want to share with our subscribers, tell us about it in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.